Hello and welcome to Beyond the Badge. I'm your host, Middlesex Sheriff Peter Koutoujian. On today's show, we'll be addressing the Massachusetts Senate's recently completed Commonwealth Conversations Tour. Over the course of 8 days, Democratic and Republican members of the Senate traveled across the Commonwealth, meeting with constituents and learning about each other's districts. On May 2nd, I had the opportunity to join senators as they visited the United Teen Equality Center in Lowell and the Christa McAuliffe Center at Framingham State College. Joining me today to talk about the tour as well as their priorities for the upcoming Senate session are two members of the State Senate. Senator Vinny deMacedo, a Plymouth Republican, in his first term in the Senate, having previously served a number of terms in the House of Representatives, and Senator Sal DiDomenico, an Everett Democrat who has served in the Senate since 2010. Prior to joining the Senate, he was a member of the Everett Common Council as well. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me today. It's great to have you here on Beyond the Badge.
Sheriff, nice to be here.
Well, listen, for those of you, I'd like to ask you about if you can tell us a little bit about the districts that you represent, to give a flavor, because each district is so different. I'm sure you even saw that during the Conversations tour.
Me first? Well, I represent a tourist area. I grew up in the town of Kingston, which neighbored Plymouth, America's hometown. And so that's kind of my background. But I also represent Bourne, Sandwich, and Falmouth, which are over the bridge. So as many of you know, Sagamore Bridge, Bourne Bridge, go over the bridge there, and that's the other half of my district. So it is a very different district than what I experienced traveling around one of these Commonwealth Conversation tours, because for us, our number one industry is the tourism industry. We benefit greatly from that.
How about you, Sal?
Sure. Well, I grew up in the city of Cambridge, as you know, and I was in the Everett City Council for the last 6 or 7 years before I got elected to the State Senate. And I represent the towns of Everett, Chelsea, Charlestown, Alston, Brighton, and Cambridge, and the west end of Boston. And as you can imagine, having Cambridge, Everett, and different communities that I just mentioned, it's a very diverse district. It's a very urban district. We have many needs in terms of educational needs, and we have a big project going on in our district, in the community that I live in right now, with the Wynn Casino. So there's a lot of different issues that we have going on with transportation and infrastructure improvements going on around our neighborhoods.
It's the same state, very different needs for each communities as well. And I'm sure you probably learned, because one of the things that I noticed during that Conversations tour by the Senate, which I think was a great idea, by the way, I noticed that each of you got to see each other in a different way. So you got to build your collegiality and your relationships among each other, which will make your body stronger. But I also saw that you were impressed and amazed, or you were maybe surprised, but at the different needs of each other's districts being so different than your own, and now understanding in a better way, perhaps, why that district needs that type of support when maybe you hadn't really thought of that before.
Sure. Well, the last tour that we took was in Vinny's district, and Senator Dan Wolf as well. And living in a community and growing up in a community that really tourism is not really the focus. I could see what drives their community, and I get a better understanding of obviously the budget process of what's important for each region. Sometimes we have a small pool of money where we're all trying to take from that pool, and now going around in different districts across our state, we understand why people are fighting for different needs across different districts. And I was amazed at some of the things that we saw in Vinny's district, and now I get a better understanding of where he's coming from. I think that makes us all better senators and better elected officials, because now we aren't just so parochial, and we're not dealing in silos across the board. We actually understand how different aspects of different industries affect the entire state as a whole.
Affect yours as well.
Right.
What about you, Senator?
Well, when you're in the Senate, you're actually making decisions for the entire state,
Right.
And so you're not making decisions just for your own community. And so the significance of this, I have to say, I kind of went in there and I wasn't sure what I would get out of the Commonwealth Conversations. Not only did I have time to spend with my colleagues, because I'm obviously new in the Senate, but I also got a better understanding of the entire Commonwealth, and I think that was a phenomenal idea for us. You talked about the UTEC program. Unbelievable program.
UTEC is a gang involved model of trying to intervene in those that are high likelihood of being incarcerated and high risk of offending law enforcement matters. That this organization comes in, kind of steps in, and helps work with those young gang-involved or potentially gang-involved people to get them back on the right track.
One of the most powerful things to me is the student, the person that they're going after. Give me your most challenge. Give me the most difficult challenge that you have, because that's the one we want. That's the person's life that we want to change. And I have to tell you, it gave me goosebumps. I was just like, how powerful. And of course, we had a couple of kids that shared their story and how they really felt they had no hope. And UTEC gave them hope. And frankly, that's what we hope to do when we're in government. We're trying to make things better. And the reality is that we may not want to see it, but there are people that don't have any hope. One of the individuals basically said that he was excited that he was able to get that first job. He never even thought about ever having a job. I mean, that's just kind of like, well, we grew up that way. And it was powerful because he saw something. He saw hope, something at the end of the tunnel. That to me probably stuck out the most. And then again, we went to Everett High, and I unfortunately had the privilege of going to Everett High. But at Everett High, I saw an inner city school that just goes above and beyond, teaches pride in their community, pride in the way that they treat people, pride, and it was amazing that level of demeanor was just really impressive that you don't see, the way they dressed, everything was without a dress code. They had a unwritten dress code. That was pretty impressive.
Yeah. No, Everett, of course, I'm a little biased when it comes to Everett High School.
Yes,
I didn't go there. I didn't go there, but I have children in the school system in Everett, and I wouldn't want them anywhere else. So, but as Vinny mentioned, bringing and it's a twofold. We're seeing everyone else's communities, but bringing them into our own, and also showing off the things that we think are great in our own communities. Also benefits us as well, because now the people that are hearing about these stories that I talk about all the time get to see it firsthand.
And probably for you, I would imagine, because I know it happens whenever I bring people in for a tour of the House of Corrections, and they get to see all of our employees and the corrections officers and the social workers and the case managers and all these, that it makes me really proud. And I see it through the lens of others, which is really nice to see. You're so used to seeing it and kind of accepting it as normal. When you see other people watching it, it gives you a whole different perspective on just how, what a wonderful job they're doing and how proud you are of that entity as well.
Absolutely. And when you hear young people telling personal stories, no matter what they are, you have to, it's more of an impact on you. There's no question.
Right. What did you do, Senator, for your when the district stopped in your area?
Well, as I mentioned, tourism, economic development, that's always been my thing. I'm a small business owner. I own a gas station. I've owned it for years. But actually, we started this tour off with something that I know you've worked a lot on, and I think all of us have worked quite extensively on, and this is the opiate epidemic.
Right.
And for us, we have a major hospital in our area, Beth Israel Deaconess Plymouth, and the hospital has just recently received a $3.7 million grant plus a $1 million anonymous donation to address the opiate epidemic, dealing with mental health. And it really is an impressive thing, as well as what our schools are doing, what our district attorney's doing, we have a big House of Corrections as well in Plymouth with the Vivitrol. And so I shared with all of my colleagues, ground zero, what's happening in America's hometown, the challenges that we're facing with the opiate epidemic. And it was an hour and a half, no press. We just wanted to hear from the players and 15 senators. Frankly, I thought it was an incredible conversation. I think we got some good ideas. We're going to take those ideas and we're going to move them into hopefully action, because I'm convinced you're going to have. We had a bill last year. But I think we're going to have a much stronger omnibus bill on the floor that all of us, Republicans and Democrats, can work together to attack this epidemic, because it is an epidemic. That's how serious I see this issue as the opiate epidemic, and it's destroying lives, and we have to do everything we can to get a hold of it.
Well, certainly a majority of those that are coming into our place that need detoxification from drugs or alcohol, the significant majority is that of opiates, maybe with other substances, but opiates are about 70% of those detoxes are for opiates, which is significant. And it must be interesting for you. I come from a more urban community. You come from a more urban community. To go down to Plymouth, which you think is it's a beautiful town, but that they have the same issues we do.
That's what exactly. That's the other part of this whole tour, is that we got to see that we have a lot more similarities than we thought. I represent Charlestown in particular, and they have it's a big issue. The opiate addiction problem in Charlestown and Boston as a whole. I have Allston Brighton as well in the West End. And these issues, there are no borders. there are no borders. And to see that going through the same issues that we are up in the more urban areas and taking action to address them, that shows that we have like education, substance abuse, those issues that are really that transcend all lines. So it's interesting to see, even though they might look a little different down there in terms of their environment and their and they have a lot of much longer driveways than we have in Everett. And but I get these right, shovel in the driveways, right? Yes, I can shovel them. Maybe about a 25-foot little spot there, but the issues are really, we have a lot more in common than we think.
So do you use placeholders on your long driveways down there in Plymouth?
No, we don't. But it's good to know that they're used here, there. But we joked about that. But it is the Commonwealth Conversations, in my personal opinion, was one of the most beneficial things that I've done, and I've been in for 16 years. First of all, it's easier in the Senate. We served in the House together. Right. There's 160 of us. You're not going to be able to move us around.
Only 40 in the Senate.
And 40 in the Senate. Right. And at our last one, we almost had half of the Senate in our region. That's a pretty impressive thing. And to be able to listen to and hopefully react to the different issues that come up, and there were a whole host of different issues. When we were in Newton, now in fairness, what we were hearing from the constituents was different than what we were hearing from in my region, or even in some of the other districts as we traveled around. They're just different conversations.
Right. Now, in speaking of sort of the issue of opiates and mental health, which I know has been a primary call to action by so many public officials, elected officials, and bodies. By the way, which is one of the worrisome things for me, is there's so many people that are trying to address this. You sometimes wonder, if you're going to lose something in the translation, if so many people are trying to grab a piece of that pie, and that's something I think as a government we need to think about. But the governor has made it a priority as well, and this is something that granted, people generally wouldn't think as a Republican governor. They'd be just tough on crime. They wouldn't be concerned about the issue of addiction or mental health itself. But this governor has been a little bit different. And tell us, Vinny, about your perspective on, and how is it to work with a governor, and we can talk about divided government, but he embraces this, which I think is nonpartisan all the way through.
Well, it is, again, this issue is not a Republican or Democrat issue. It's a human issue. And so it's, the people that are getting addicted are Republicans and Democrats equally. It doesn't matter. The problem is it is the number one issue. And so I was really proud when I was at his inauguration where he said he was going to hit this issue head on. And he knew that he was going to, for him to be successful in this endeavor, it is going to be working across the aisle. And my experience with the governor, Charlie Baker, is that he will indeed do that. His goal is to work with the he knew what he was coming into. He had been the Secretary of Administration and Finance. He had been the Secretary of Health and Human Services. He knows that for him to be successful, he has to work across the aisle. And that's what we're doing. That's what I've been in the legislature for 16 years, and I'm going on my 17th year now in the Senate. And I feel like that's what I've tried to do. I don't care about titles. You and I have known each other for many years. It didn't matter if you're a Democrat or I'm a conservative. It's just a Republican. We get along. We work together. We find common ground on the things we can work on. And if we disagree, we disagree, and we can debate about it. Kind of like Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill.
Right.
It was these people were leaders in their parties, strong, powerful individuals. And yet they battled it out, and then afterwards they go out and have dinner together. And that's what we're missing in today's government.
Yeah, well, today's government down in D.C., but in our state, there is no big divide. In the Senate in particular, Vinny and the Republicans and myself, we get along great. And Governor Baker has made this his mission to fight the opiate addiction problem, and that has been an issue that we've been battling for the last 10, 15 years. And to have a governor stand up at his inauguration, as Vinny said, and make this a priority, I think we all felt, Democrats and Republicans, that this is a guy we can work with. And he hasn't changed that opinion by what he's saying or what he's doing. He's very open and very accessible to myself. I can honestly say I walked into the governor's office a couple of days ago, and they let me walk through the door, and there was no one telling me to stop, which is a little different than what I'm used to. But it just shows what kind of leadership that he's going to be having. And in this state, quite frankly, we should be the model for the national government to come and look and see how we can effectively work together and solve problems. And the opiate addiction problem is one that we're going to be working hard together on.
Right, and you know, and Vinny, you and I have worked on many issues in the House of Representatives together, and quite honestly, I find that the difference in our partisanship and difference in sometimes our political ideology was good for the debate, because it's important you have both sides for debate, so people can become educated about other perspectives that are out there. But honestly, it was more fun to make fun of each other. We actually made fun of each other, made fun of ourselves, and that was a lot of the fun too.
Well, I think the biggest thing is that if you take a more global approach, what we actually have in common is far greater than what we have, you know, in opposition.
Right.
And that's the funny thing. It's like we live in the greatest place on earth. We live in America, and I hate to be partisan. I'm an immigrant. I came from you know, the Cape Verde Islands. But to me, America is the greatest place on earth, and we participate in that government. The fact that, you know, an Armenian, an Italian, and a Cape Verdean can be involved in America, frankly, where people all over the world look to our government as a model, and we get to participate. That's pretty cool.
Right.
And so there's a lot more in common than there is
Absolutely.
in what is the difference between us.
Right.
And I always say, Vinny's my favorite Republican, but I have a lot of favorite Republicans now. So as time goes on, we've evolved, you know, and it's nice to have friends. You know, we work on a lot of issues that we care about that are similar for our communities. And, you know, and Senator Bruce Tarr, the minority leader in the House, in the Senate, has been a good friend, and I co-sponsor some of his bills. He co-sponsors some of mine, and that's how it should be.
Right.
You know, if you agree on an issue, we work together, and then we go for dinner, like you said, with Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan used to afterwards. There's no, this combative atmosphere in the Senate. Right now, we have a great Senate President. Stan Rosenberg is fantastic, and Bruce Tarr work well together, and that sets the tone. That's the tone for the rest of us. You know,
Right.
The culture is created that we're all going to work hard together, and it's been effective.
And so tell us how you think that the process is going to work, because there's been some discussion about the Senate process working a little bit different, the dynamic being a little bit different this year. We don't have to get into specifics, but how do you think that process is going to work?
Well, the Senate President has tried to create this more open atmosphere where it's shared leadership, where the chairs of each committee have more autonomy to move bills throughout the Senate, and we all have our own interests that we want to push forward as a whole. And Senate President was very open and honest when he was trying to get this seat of how he was going to lead the Senate, and to his credit, he hasn't wavered at all. He's a good person. He's been in the Senate for over 30 years. He's a friend first to most of us, Senate President second, and he has really opened the lines of communication in the office. And he's just a person that really cares. He's a big heart. You can tell that his focus is helping people. And I think as senators, we tend to follow the leader in a lot of things, but he's telling us, no, we're the leaders.
Right.
We're all leaders as a whole. And now that we have 40 leaders in the Senate, we can all do some good things together. So it's effective so far. And we started the budget process. We had our first budget hearing, and we're going to be traveling across the state to listen to the public and listen to you. You'll be testifying soon before the Senate panel and the House panel. But so far, it's been effective, and I think we're going to be seeing some good things out of it.
Great. How about you?
Well, it's going to be a little different. I mean, obviously,
You come from the House
coming
into the
from the House
Senate,
and the
right?
Senate, clearly, I've sensed the will from the new Senate President to have this shared leadership concept, and I'm encouraged by that. Obviously, being a member of the minority party, to be able to participate in anything. Though democracy is tough sometimes, insofar as you're going to have some battles. But frankly, that's why we got in this game. We got in it to be able to debate ideas and have philosophies. See, to me, I feel like, as long as I have an opportunity to share why I share what my perspective is, then I've had a victory. And so I believe that the new Senate President is going to allow us to have that. And so clearly the Democrats are going to have the majority. But the fact that I know that my voice will be heard, so that maybe the bill is a little bit less than it otherwise would have been because I was able to give some perspective, that's a good thing. And it's sometimes that's hard as a leader to give up some control, because in many ways, when you're the leader, you can kind of set the debate. And for him to abdicate some of that is a good thing. And I think it's going to get hard sometimes for him because you want to make decisions very quickly. And now there's 40 of us instead of just him and maybe his chair of Ways and Means. But I ultimately think it's better for democracy. It's better for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. But I will say this: it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, well, it's tough to cede control to others, especially if they're not going in the direction you were thinking. But quite honestly, as an executive now, I find that that's the best way to do it, is to empower, give people a task and empower them to do it. And they generally tend to make the right decisions. Sure. We always think, oh, we've got to do it ourselves, and people aren't going to make the right decisions. And yet, if we empower them and support them and have the right people involved, they do make the right decisions, and they make us all better too.
Lead by consensus, which is an interesting thing. I watched Dana Molifaria do it. You know him, the
president of Bridgewater State College.
I watched my
University.
superintendent of schools lead by consensus.
Yep.
It's a pretty impressive thing, and I think Charlie Baker's the same type of individual, lead by consensus, which is something that's rare. I've always aspired to that concept of lead by consensus. I do it with my own staff. We're hey, listen, we're all in this together. We're moving together, and I think that's the best way to.
And I know, and actually, you have an interesting perspective because you were the staff before for your former boss, State Senator Anthony Koutoujian.
Right.
So you kind of get that model probably in a way that others may not even.
Well, it's interesting to come from that background because we all know, and I'm not speaking out of turn, the staff does the majority of the work in the office. They do all the research, they present all the things to you, and you make decisions off of that. So you rely on them heavily. Right. So my philosophy has always been to hire people who are smarter than I am.
Yeah, right.
And I have
That's
no problem
hard
doing
too,
that. It's actually pretty simple. It's the easiest thing I do. But no, it's honestly, they're the ones that really make you look good, and they do a lot of the legwork. And being a former staff person and understanding how things work and the process works, that is a huge advantage coming into the office. When I won my race, I had 2 days to file budget amendments. And if you don't know what you're doing at that point in time, that budget cycle is gone.
Right.
And now you've lost not only an opportunity for you, but for your constituents.
Right.
And we were able to file amendments and get things passed within 2 days after getting sworn in.
You were already hitting the ground running.
We understood the process, we understood the people, and we understood how the building works.
Right.
The dynamic of who's doing what and the culture in each office. So being a staff person has huge advantages, and there's a lot of former staff people in the legislature right now who are doing some great things.
Yeah. Now, I know that as we come up through this year, transportation, there's going to be a number of big issues. Transportation is going to be a big issue, especially in light of the MBTA and its difficulties during this very difficult season of ice and snow and record-setting levels of snow. What do you think some of the answers are to our transportation needs in the future of transportation, as well as other things that might be on the docket this year for you?
Well, for me, just starting off, the reality is we have to run it more efficiently and more effectively. The MBTA has had its challenges, and I think that looking at that, how can we do a better job of it? And this is something which I don't think the current governor thought he was going to be delving into right now, but he's had to delve into it, and he's said, okay, bring it here. Let's figure it out. Let's work together. There has to be a way to do this better. I think that we're going to find some, clear out some efficiencies. See, people don't mind paying taxes as long as they don't see it abused. Right. And the reality is there are clearly areas where we all know, we've been around there, that there are shortcomings, and people get angry with those shortcomings. People get angry when they see that the Health Connector website being crashed, and knowing that we're giving people health care, free health care for 6 months, 8 months, a year, people that can afford it. That makes them upset. People get upset with DCF. So we have to clear that out. And once people feel comfortable with, they know that we're trying the best. Because you know what, right now, people want money invested in transportation. They want it at the MBTA because that's their need right now. But they want to know that we're doing it efficiently, effectively. And that's why that transparency, that open process will enable us that, nobody's coming in there with special interests. They're going to go in there and work together to solve the problem. I think then we can have a conversation of how much money are we actually spending in this area, and is it enough? Should we do more? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, there's definitely a need for revenue. Obviously, we understand the age of all the cars and infrastructure that the T's been working with, and the debt that's been put on them. In the perfect storm of having an unprecedented winter coming upon them and having a new governor come in, right, and all these different things, which is the perfect storm in the wrong way.
Right.
And I'm a big fan of increasing revenue to take care of the transportation needs that we have in our state. I wish I drove. I actually rode the train in from Everett a couple days ago. And it was the Orange Line, which isn't one of the lines that they have a lot of problems on. But I could see that the employees themselves as well were being drained. Like they understand what's going on in the newspapers. They understand what people are saying publicly. And it's taking an effect on everybody in the system. And they were coming up to us and asking us questions about how they could be helpful to make things better. And the passengers on the train were saying, let's just fix this. I'm willing to pay a little more. And as Vinny said, they want to see results.
Right.
So it's not just about throwing money at the problem. We have to make sure we do it in the right places and do a good job of taking care of taxpayer
There's
money.
integrity to it. If they believe that their monies are being well spent, they'll be more willing to
There's no
be
question.
comfortable with giving money.
No question. And even in Everett, where they typically don't want to have any increased revenue of any sort, I hear from them all the time. Let's just pull the money into this and let's make it right.
Right. If you can't use it, and even today recently there was an article about there's not enough parking capacity for a lot of these.
Right. Right.
So if you can't park in the lot, then you can't use the public transportation. It's so complex, and it does turn into our economy and money as well. And if you were to ask people out there in your districts a few of the biggest concerns of theirs, what do you think they'd be?
Well, in my district in particular, infrastructure improvements is big. Educational funding. We have a very urban area, as we said, and our educational needs. In Everett in particular, we have 500 births a year. 500 births a year is not sustainable.
Yeah.
And we have our budget done a year ahead of time. So when the new kids come into school in that September, we literally have 500 more kids before that first check is given to the city of Everett. That's a big need. But also we have the biggest private development coming into my community. And the traffic implications that my constituents talk about all the time going into the city of Everett.
Right.
It's bad as it is today. And so my constituents are looking to us at the State House to make sure that we don't forget that they're the bosses. I always go into classrooms and tell my kids in classes, who's my boss?
Right.
And they always say the governor, the mayor, and I tell them, no, they're the boss.
Right.
And their families are the boss. And we have 175,000 bosses that we have to make happy.
Right.
And it's a challenging,
Right.
concept when you look at it and different needs from different communities. But when you look at the opiate addiction and things we talked about, transportation, educational funding, that goes across all lines.
Right. What about you, Senator?
For me, it's always been about jobs. I always felt if we had a good economy and things were going well, then the need for services would be less, and ultimately, if there is need, you'll actually have the resources to provide those needs. And so that's what I've always focused on. But I hate to go back to this, but the reality is right now, what I'm hearing more than anything is let's get a handle on this opiate epidemic. We heard it in my district. We've heard it at the hearings across the state, and so. As crazy as it is, when you talk about 80% of the people coming in have some type of addiction in the prisons. Well, we're spending, billions in the prisons. If we can address this issue, maybe they won't get into the prison because guess what? They're stealing when they don't have, when they need the drug.
Right.
So this is a whole paradigm shift. In healthcare, same thing. We're spending a fortune on physical health when if we address the mental health issue to a greater degree, we may not be spending as much in the physical health. And we're spending, pushing $17-18 billion in mass health alone. So, which is the physical health. 90% goes to physical, 10% to mental health. So that's something I think we're going to have a paradigm shift going on.
Well, I think you guys are bringing up great points, and I think you're right. Districts that include Plymouth and Everett and in Middlesex County overall have a lot more in common than we have in difference, actually. And I really thank you for your leadership. It's great to see both of you, and it was great to see you during that tour, learning and growing and laughing with each other and making each other's districts better and stronger in our state as well. So thank you so much for joining us, Senator deMacedo, Senator DiDomenico. We'd like to thank you very much for joining us for this episode of Beyond the Badge. I hope you find our insights as informative and valuable as I did, at least their insights that I did. Thank you for watching Beyond the Badge. Until next time, life is full of choices. Please make good ones.
So good to see you guys. So, what's up?
Oh, we finally bought a place.
Holy cow.
You seriously have enough saved to do that?
We've been putting a little aside each month.
Jeez, at the end of the month, we have nothing left to save.
Yeah, I have no idea where it goes.
Well, you're spending a lot on...
Was it good? Oh, how is my account overdrawn?
When it comes to financial stability, don't get left behind. Get tools and tips for saving at feedthepig.org.